tenho que esperar, liberar o pessoal para entrar?
Sim, por favor.
O pessoal está dizendo que está esperando, pode entrar.
Deixa eu ver aqui, onde é que é? Porque não apareceu para mim.
Não está aparecendo para mim também, não.
Também não, que não aparece.
Uhum. E os outros estão vendo? Onde é que vocês estão vendo, Léo e Paty?
Ok,
Eu estou no...
O pessoal está dizendo que está esperando, pode entrar.
Agora está aparecendo lá, Thay. Você está lá, na sala da YouTube. Parou.
Ok.
Ok, não está aparecendo para mim também, não.
Também não, que não aparece.
Okay, the opening is finished. There's no more. Okay, the opening. And we are live on YouTube.
Alfredo, do you want to do a quick introduction for this
No,
school?
okay, I'll just say very few words. It's a great pleasure to be here and to have all these important people to present their work, as Pierre and Tayana who would share him. And it's really a pleasure because we got the support of ACM CBSoft to do it. And we are very proud. We would really like to have this in-person mode, but it was not possible. So let's do the best that we can on this remote setting. So Tayana, please, it's with you.
It's an honor to introduction, our first keynote here at the summer school, our summer school. That's not a real summer school. For the north of Brazil, it's always summer. So, but I will ask you for just one quick sentence in Portuguese, just for the students. Guys, vocês estão preparados para o que vai acontecer, certo? Aproveitem ao máximo. Vocês sabem quem vocês estão para ver. Se concentrem, certo? Parem tudo que estiverem fazendo. De preferência, abram suas câmeras, sejam gentis, né? Interajam com o nosso participante. Aproveitem ao máximo. Vocês sabem quantas vezes a gente vai ter essa possibilidade? Esse é o último CBSoft Online. Aproveitem. Então, abram as câmeras, olhem, interajam com o PER, aproveitem o máximo possível. Now it's my honor. Let's start with Dr. Per Runeson is a professor of software engineering at Lund University, Sweden, and leader of its software engineering research group. His research interests include empirical research and collaboration with industry on software development and management methods. He's particularly interested in studies on test and the role of open source and open data in software engineering. He's the principal author of case study research in software engineering, has co-authored experimentation in software engineering, serves on the editorial board of IEEE Transactions of Software Engineering and Software Testing Verification Reliability, the advisory board of Empirical Software Engineering, and is a member of several program committees. And of course, is cited for us in many papers. We love your work. He is one of the co-PC chairs of the next exam. So prepare yourselves for this talk. I am looking forward to it. Per, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tayana, for this kind words. And while trying to share my slides and all that, I just wanted to say that I don't really feel that it's me you were talking about, but I used to say that the most impact I have is through my students, both at master's and bachelor's level, because you will spend a whole career in applying what I may share. So therefore, I'm very happy to be here and share a little bit of my more what I've learned more recently. You heard about case studies and experimentation. I've been working on that my whole career, but the last, say, 5 years, I've looked more into design science, which I hope can inspire you to position your work in a new context. So we'll see if we can get my slides here. Okay, so the title for today, and I just would say, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I will try to follow that. Otherwise, we take them. We'll leave some space after for questions and discussions. So the title of this talk, which we have agreed upon, is the Design Science Paradigm as a Frame for Empirical Software Engineering. So empirical software engineering, what's that? I guess you are familiar with the basic definitions since you are here, and I know that are many very successful empirical software engineering research in Brazil. So here you can find from the very first issue of the Empirical Software Engineering Journal. Its first issue was in 1996. That was about the time when I was a PhD student. And Warren Harrison and Vic Basili defined in the first editorial that empirical software engineering is the study of software-related artifacts for the characterization, understanding, evaluation, prediction, control, management, or improvement through qualitative or quantitative analysis. This is quite a heavy definition, but basically aims to something related to software, something related to understanding, evaluation, prediction. So basically looking how things work either in practice or in an experimental setup where we try to mimic some kind of the practice. So this is the basis for empirical software engineering. And since 1996 or even earlier, there has been basically a flood of different books and papers guiding how to perform empirical software engineering. We have books on experiments, on case studies, surveys, systematic literature reviews. We have most recently this Contemporary Empirical Methods in Software Engineering, which is an edited book of advances when it comes to research methods. And there is a lot of focus. These papers from 3 years ago surveyed empirical software research in software engineering. And they found 341 papers which were devoted to methodological issues. So there is a lot about how we perform the empirical studies, which is good. I'm not saying anything against that, and I'm part of that flood of books and papers. But I think we are missing a little bit. If you remember the definition I show, empirical software in engineering is the study of software-related artifacts. So what about the artifacts? What we study? Might be a tool, might be a review method, it might be collaboration work in open source, or you name it. So in order to address the artifacts which we actually design to play a role in software engineering, we have to look into design science. I have looked into design science principles very much together with my colleague Emily Engström, and also with Peggy Story from University of Victoria. And here we have the core of design science. Design science is always working on the borderline between practice and theory. And with theory, we here mean the abstraction of knowledge from the field of practice. So theory, the term theory can be used in many different meanings, but here it is abstracted knowledge about how we work in practice. And design science typically circles on this borderline. We we study the problem. There is some kind of a problem which we want to address. We conceptualize it to see which concepts are we addressing, which concepts are there in the real world which we want to address. And then in the theoretical side, we design solutions. We define a new tool, or we define a new concept or a new language or whatever it is. And this tool can be partly evaluated in the conceptual world, but we must meet the reality in one way or the other to empirically validate, did our solution address the problems and how well did it match? So this is the basic principle of design science, where we have the empirical validation, the empirical software engineering studies as an important part, but we add the parts of problem conceptualization, which also is empirical studies, and we have the solution design, which is rather an innovative design activity. And design science is about gathering knowledge about these design processes. So that was a brief introduction, and I will try to give you a lot more in depth here. And again, please, if you have questions, you can raise them in the chat, or we talk afterwards. So basically, the outline is, what is design? We will touch a little bit upon knowledge theory. I don't know how much philosophy you have taken, but I will give you a little bit of a philosophy of science introduction here. Goals of design science, the practices, and also how we specifically see design science as a methodology. Okay. So, what is design? That's a word that can be used in many contexts. It could be physical artifacts, nice design furniture. These actually from our neighbor country, Denmark. But that's not the kind of design we are talking about here. We do design in software. We design systems. So we define how they are structured and so on. But that's actually not the focus of this session either. Rather, we see design as something more abstract, something more general, and that's a solution approach to a software engineering problem. So we are talking in design science about solutions to software engineering problems and the knowledge gained in how to design such solutions and how to evaluate that these solutions match the software engineering problems. And such solutions may be tools, methods, languages, but also organizations, way of working, algorithms. In some areas of design science, they talk about artifacts. In information systems, they tend to talk about artifacts. You may have heard that. But that could also include many different kinds of solution approaches. When talking about so general words as design and science, they are used in many different contexts. This graph may help you a little bit of what we are aiming at. So in science, we are looking to, our overall goal is to learn stuff. We want to understand, want to learn how things function, and the means to do that is to solve a problem. However, if we look into design in the real world, we want to solve something. That's the primary goal, to solve. But while we are solving that problem, we learn stuff. And design science is basically the intersection between these two. So we want to learn generally how to solve specific problems. And the design science is about how we learn about generally solving software engineering problems. So yes, this is my summary of design science. Before going into the more practice of design science, so the kind of problems and solutions and methods to reach to them, I will give you a little bit of a knowledge theory course. It's still early morning for you. Here in Europe, it's afternoon already, so we are a little bit fresher. Some terms and definitions. When we talk about the paradigm, it's a basic belief system and theoretical framework with some assumptions. So it's kind of a system where we have some basic theories and we have some basic assumptions on 4 different things. One is the ontology, the kind of the nature of our beliefs about reality. So answering the question, what is reality? It could be reality exists, like for natural sciences, it's there, it's just to be found and understood. But we can also see more in the social sciences, it's more that reality is created in the interplay between humans and organizations, and therefore it's shaped by history, but it's not really natural laws to be observed. Epistemology is the next aspect of a paradigm. It studies the nature of knowledge and the process by which knowledge is acquired. So how do we know this reality? In science, the natural sciences, they do experimentation, they manipulate variables because they can expect, given the ontology, they expect a causal relation between the manipulation and the outcome. However, in social science, there is no real causal relations, but still we can understand that people tend to react in a certain way, or countries tend to work in one way, even though it's not a causal relation. So the epistemology then addresses how do we know this reality? And in most epistemological stances, you have an empirical element, but the empirical data is interpreted differently in different branches. Then we come into more well-known grounds, I guess. Methodology, that's the general approach to the production of data. So within this paradigm, what data is considered valid? Do we only see experiments as valid sources of data? Do we only see studies of practice in software engineering industry? How do we see mining of software repositories? Is that data considered valid about reality? And each of these methodologies can have their pros and cons and can be discussed in depth. And fourth, more specifically, how do we collect data within this context? Do we interview people? Do we send surveys to them? Do we mine data from open source repositories, etc.? So these 4 is characterized the way we see on the knowledge that we create in a field. And overall, there are 3 major classes of research paradigms. First, the formal sciences, which is philosophy and mathematics, and they basically don't care about the reality in terms of empirical studies, because mathematics aims to make an internally consistent system. And then we can use it for a lot of good things to understand and analyze the reality. But mathematics as such is a system which is internally consistent. The explanatory sciences, that's typically natural sciences and also major sections of social sciences, where the research aims to explain how things work, and sometimes also why things work, but mostly on the how side. And the design science, the third paradigm, is engineering. Most of the engineering, but also medical science, where the medical science tries to understand, but with a purpose to maybe understand the impact of a drug on a certain disease, and then engineer a treatment that could help people with that type of disease. Where do we position software engineering in these different paradigms? It's not. I would not say that it is within one, because we can have aspects of software engineering in different branches of research. So as an explanatory science, if we present our findings as naturally occurring laws, and there are some branches of software engineering that actually claim to be laws. Conway's law, Brooks' Mythical Man Month is very much presented as a law. But I would say most of what we know about software engineering is design practice. It is not at the level of naturally occurring laws, but rather something we have designed, approaches to develop software, to maintain software, to test software, and also the software artifacts themselves are human-made and thereby under design science paradigm. The Nobel Prize winners, Simon, he talked about the distinction between science of the natural and science of the artificial. And since most of software is on the artificial side, it's typically design science. We have another researcher, Van Eycken, who worked on in the field of organizations with design science, and they distinguish between organization theory, which is the part where they explain how and why organizations function or don't function in a certain way, and the design science, which is management theory, which is recommendations for how to manage a certain organization to achieve certain goals. So it's not an easy one way or very, very clear definition what is software engineering, but we can see software engineering from these different paradigm perspectives, and thereby understand how do we contribute to the knowledge in one field or the other. Okay, with this very theoretical perspective, we will now be a little bit more hands-on and pragmatic. So what are the goals of research under the design science paradigm? There are basically two goals. One is to produce prescriptive knowledge for professionals in a discipline. That means, as researchers, we come with recommendations. We tell a practitioner, you should do it this way. You should perform a code review in that way. If you have an organization like this, we can show that it's more efficient to work in this way than the other one. That's the kind of prescriptive knowledge that that we as software engineer researchers or design science researchers provide to the practitioners in our field. And the second is to share empirical insights gained from studies or investigations of these prescriptions in the context. So that's where the knowledge sharing between researchers come in. So understanding and communicating what did we learn from, for example, a case study in a specific field in a specific context. So the dual goal is, one is problem solving and the second is knowledge acquisition. If you go back to this picture, we can see the aspects here. Here we have the problem conceptualization, which is understanding what the problem is. That's the knowledge acquisition and understanding in depth what there is in the practice. While the solution design is designing the solution, and which then becomes a prescriptive recommendation for professionals. And the feedback loop is then investigate in the context or in some simplified context whether or not it meets the solution solves the problem under study. The constructs, the elements of a design science study is, I will give you a little bit of definitions. First, this recommendation, or we can call it a theory. It's often referred to as a technological rule. So this is the recommendation we give to the practitioner. This recommendation is based on the study of the empirical study in terms of problem solution or this design and validation cycles of our work. But this is maybe not so distinctive characteristics for research, because engineers also work in this way. They solve problems. They iterate solutions and practice. So what we add to make it design science research is support for assessing the value of the produced knowledge. So we have mechanism in assessing whether or not the solution is relevant, with what rigor it can be concluded that this solution is relevant for a certain context, and the novelty, which may not only be the novelty in terms of the technological solution, but it could also be novelty in terms of demonstrating through the empirical study that it applies to a new context. So that can expand the concept of novelty from being focused only on the technical solution to be broader in terms of how it's studied or in which context it's empirically evaluated. If we make this picture a little bit more complex, you can see still the practice and theory domains here. And we have the problem conceptualization, we have the solution design, and we have the empirical validation, as I showed before. We also have the technological rule, which is this summarized or condensed form for knowledge, which is a recommended guideline to the practitioner. Then we work on the theoretical side. We work on constructs, so more general elements. So a problem construct could be, for example, the number of or the defects in software engineering. And design constructs could be methods to reduce the number of defects. So that's elements or constructs which are phenomena in the software engineering context. And here we then have the cycle. We try to understand the problem. We identify what are the elements of the problem. And already here we have a contribution from a research point of view, because the practice is not an easy identifiable box. It's an organization that works with software development, and there is an interplay between how they actually perform this specific software engineering task, how they are organized, and this problem conceptualization is about identifying what are the core elements of this context that has an influence on the software engineering problem. Once we have described our constructs, we look for a design which is aimed to address this problem. And we can do that by looking into the literature, what existing solutions there are. We can look for practitioners, what solutions practitioners have. And this is the process of solution design. But still, on the theoretical side, we work on a somewhat general level, not to the specific company or environment in which we work. But then the instantiation is that we actually build something into the context where we then empirically validate whether we meet the problem or not. And then there is a knowledge extraction activity that we abstract away from what we learned in the practice context to the theoretical level. So we can feed back how did it work in practice, in the specific practice that we were addressing. Design science is not very much talked about in software engineering, but it's there. We looked into ICSE papers over a couple of years. We took the best papers awarded in ICSE, and we analyzed them from a design science point of view. And we could map the papers onto this model. There were papers that were purely descriptive, so they looked into a real problem instance and identified what does it look like, what are the elements of this context where they work. We found papers which actually took the full cycle around, starting with a problem instance, identifying the problem, designing a solution, implementing the solution, and evaluating it. But we also saw examples where they started with a general problem construct and also with a specific solution proposal and evaluated that. So we concluded that it's fully feasible to describe software engineering contributions in terms of design science. It's not done explicitly, but we think it could be helpful in both positioning the work, claiming what is our contribution. If our aim is not to dig into the original context of the research, we could look at others. Already we can build on others' work who did that identification of problems or challenges in industry in general, and start from there. And in that way, we could build up. So not every single paper needs to be this full cycle, but we can together build up the combined knowledge in software engineering in a better way. We also defined what we called a visual abstract, which actually has these elements. We have the technological rule, which in this case was to optimize the energy efficiency of software development in Java. And the recommendation was to use a per method energy profile. Here we have a brief description of the problem instance describing the problems with energy consumption in Java. Here we describe how this problem understanding was achieved. Here is the solution approach, and the validation. And the 3 boxes here is for the research validation, where we can define whether or not, to what extent it's relevant, the rigor used when conducting the studies, and what is the claim to be the novelty of this research. So it's also a way of communicating the research, and then you can make clear that not every paper has a full contribution to all parts, but you can see what part you focused on in this particular study. Okay, so how can we get this into practice? First, so now I will walk through each of these elements in the graph and try to make them a little bit more concrete for you. So these technological rules, which are prescriptive knowledge for professionals, they are typically expressed in using these templates. So to achieve some effect or some change in a certain situation or context, use certain solution or intervention. So this is a standard way to express. And if we express technological rules in our papers, this is very, very clear and condensed statements on the recommendation for practice, which we base on our research. And it's also a means then for communication between industry and academia to more clearly present what is the outcome of our research. I can skip this one. An implication of that the research is conducted in specific context is that all our results are context dependent. There are attempts to define these contexts with context variables, and you actually end up with a complexity that we have the number of potential combinations is higher than the number of the atoms in the universe. So we cannot describe the context in a complete way. So rather, we have to accept that there are context dependencies, and we have to compare to the study context and generalize analytically or case-based rather than using a statistical generalization, which you must be able to describe your context in a formal way. But the way we extend the scope of validity is to run more studies. So this graph from Dag Fröberg et al.'s chapter on building theories in software engineering indicates that we might be interested in a bigger scope, but for each study we may cover only a subset of this, and gradually we can add the scope of our research. Still, we don't make claims about the scope outside what we actually have done. In this, now into the problem conceptualization, which is the next activity here. That's where I assume you are well familiar with the battery of empirical observational methods. We can do case study method, we can do ethnography, we can do surveys, etc., etc. It's about describing what's the problem. And the outcome of this study is expressed in terms of this problem construct, but we also look forward towards kind of an envisioned solution. So what do we think would be feasible solutions to the problems we address or we identify? Very much of problem description is purely descriptive, but we, in the context of design science, we should much more focus on understanding and identifying essential concepts which we can agree on as a community, and then striving towards generalization. A paper that you could, I highly recommend you to read in this setting is a paper by Claes-Jan Stuhl and Brian Fitzgerald on theory-oriented software engineering, which is pretty much the same theory versus empirical divide as we talk about here in design science, and they focus on the theory formation, where we collect our knowledge in a condensed way that we can exchange understanding about. And you can also see along this scale where the purely descriptive research is empirical data only. In empirical studies, we have empirical data and some conceptualization. But if we can move further towards the right in this, we can derive theory and agree on the concepts that are essential to describe our field. The solution design, that's an iterative and creative activity. And if you look into traditional computer science research, there is a lot of this design, but they mostly have novelty of the technical design as their quality criteria. In a design science context, reuse of existing solutions is a perfectly fine alternative. Because you can move it into a new context and demonstrate, and also that you actually demonstrate its ability to solve a certain problem is a contribution. In design science, it's embedded that alternative solutions should be considered, so and it should be reported transparently. However, there is no stepwise design model for how to come up with a design. It is a creative activity. And if you can report as transparently as possible where the inspiration comes from, that's good. But we can rarely answer the question, how did you come up with that solution? And the empirical validation, again, we are back to known grounds in empirical software engineering. But here it's about the evaluative methods. Then abstraction and instantiation. Now there is a lot of text in this graph, and I don't expect you to capture it all. But here is different levels of going from the very specific knowledge in the field and abstract knowledge, more complete and mature in a field where it's established in the research community, and this is a typically a development of in a topic or a subtopic in a field, that we go from understanding the individual cases and then gradually see the patterns and the more general solutions up to the theory level. And we can also see that within software engineering examples. A couple of years ago, I compared experiments on different test and review methods. And we can see that some papers, they compared on the instance level. So with the defect detection methods, comparing static and dynamic, comparing inspection or reading with structural testing and functional testing. And here were certain instances. And it was quite interesting to see that papers discussed this at different levels, made claims at different levels, but the claims were very little connected to the instantiation, and there was very little discussion about the context in which the study was conducted. So that could, our conclusion from this was, it is very much comparing apples and pears, because there is no systematic way of combining this different levels. Okay, so my last part here, design science as a methodology. So this far I've talked about the paradigm, the more principle, but then there are methodologies, and I saw in the chat there is a question which I hope to address now. If I don't, please let me know. Because design science paradigm can embrace many different methodologies. So now we are down to the instructional level. Which steps do we take? What I've shown before is more of different kinds of elements which are needed to make a complete design science study. But the methodologies, they rather show what are the focus and what are the steps to be taken in such a study. And here I and Claes Folin, we were comparing design science methodologies. That's the design science instantiated as a methodology, action research, and technology transfer model. And we can see that all these three methodologies, they have elements of these three actions. So identifying a challenge, looking up at alternatives and developing a solution, and evaluating a solution and improve practice. And this is a Deming cycle, the classical quality improvement cycles. And we were mapping these three methodologies to that cycle. And in summary, our conclusion is that yes, they have different history, and that's why they come from different perspectives and to a large extent overlap. But there are some distinct differences. In the design science methodology, the focus is on design knowledge, so understanding this general, practically useful, but well empirically grounded knowledge. In action research, the focus is on change. The specific context, there is a need for a change. The means for change has secondary meaning. The primary goal is to change the context, the situation in context. And in TTM or TTRM, as we call it as a research method, the main outcome is the knowledge transfer. So having a specific solution that is transferred into industry practice. There is slight difference in how the role are played between the practitioners and the researchers. But more of the difference is the driver of the literature research, where design science has a dual focus both on the problem concepts and the solution concepts. Action research has a focus on the diagnosing of the context of change, and in TTM it's mostly on the solution side, so on state on the art. And the learning in design science, we stress the dual outcome, both when it comes to the problem definition and the solution. In action research, the theory is considered the secondary output, but while the change is the primary output. And TTM talks about lessons learned from applying this state of the art into practice. So you can read in that paper if you are interested in more details. You will get access to the slides afterwards. You can find back. There are, of course, many variants. In information systems, Alan Heffner's view is probably the most prevalent. And you can find pretty much the same elements. You have the design cycle where you build things. You have the rigor cycle where you anchor your work in the theoretical knowledge base. And you have the relevance cycle where you perform the empirical studies both to understand and to evaluate solutions. Roel Wirenga has worked in the borderline between information systems and software engineering, and he has similar approach to Heffner, but he distinguishes between problem solving and knowledge acquisition. So that's where he can see different goals in this design science, which is a little bit of a combination of action research and design science. He actually talks about technical action research, but that's more a matter of slightly changing terminology than any major change to the paradigm. So, in summary, design science aims to improve an area of practice. It is not very much explicitly used in software engineering, but we have concluded it fits well as a frame to communicate, to design work, to build theories, so we can build on each other's work. So what design science can support our community is to help communicating and assessing relevance of our research, communicate the level of rigor and the novelty, which is not only the solution novelty, but there may be novelty in applying a known solution to a new domain. It can assist communication between researchers and practitioners, and it can help us in continuously build theoretical knowledge base in software engineering. So design science is less about how we actually do research. I think most of you can, in one way or another, position your work in these cycles. But this is more about how we view the research and communicate what are we doing and what's our main contribution in this specific study. So by that, here is my contact information, and now I'm open for questions.
Thanks so much, Bear. Let me help you thanking Bear so much for this great talk. I'm so sorry about the noise in my apartment. That the problem with the online events we always have the noise when you don't want it. It was a great talk, Bear. We thank you so much. I know that you told us that design science research is not very used in software engineering, but I think that it is changing. And thank you to you, to Margaret, to Iringa, to Hevner, and so on. I am a fan of your work. And so you guys, if you don't interrupt me, I will continue and ask my questions. So it's your chance now. You have the best authority in the team, and you can ask your questions. Lavinia has already started, but we had 5 slides explaining Lavinia questions. So anyone? No, everyone is so shy.
So then maybe I can ask back to Lavinia if you got your question answered.
Great, Lavinia, can you talk, or you can type?
Okay, yes, I got my answer in the slides. Like I got 5 slides. It should be okay.
Okay, that's fine. And if you have any continuous, there is a paper, and then you can email me.
Yeah, I actually read the paper, and my question was based on that, because I also see that most people also don't mention the ontology and the epistemology. I don't know how to say it in the papers, and usually you can get the context, but this creates like a difference when where people want to go and what they're saying in the papers. So
yeah, that's a very relevant comment, and you can also see it when you get reviewer feedback sometimes that the reviewer may complain about there are too few samples. One case is only one case, but it depends on what your claims is. If you claim to do any generalized description of all software engineering projects, then of course a single case is not enough. On the other hand, it's very tiny parts of software engineering we can capture in such a broad and generalized study. So it's always a trade-off whether you want to go deep into one case to understand or a few cases to understand the concepts, and then gradually extend by adding new cases to see if they function the same, or you can find contradiction, and in that case try to understand why did it not work in a certain context.
Thank you so much, Lavinia, for the question too. Swelling has a question, but before her question, I have another question from YouTube. I'm trying to monitor all our channels, and Professor Jailate asked, do you think DS framework apply to software design practice as we have in architecture and engineering for building? Great question.
That's a great question. Especially as you mentioned the word beauty. If we can, I don't think about the pure visional beauty. Maybe you saw my nice picture here. That's, I think, most people agree as beautiful. It's very close to my vacation house. But if beauty involves, I mean, we are aiming to understand what's the effect of what we do. So we want to achieve efficient or development or a good solution for some purpose. And yes, there is maybe some kind of judgmental aspect that could be close to beauty, because the engineers function better if they like the environment. So there is the matter of taste, and where I can think the beauty comes in. But for the engineering purpose, I would say maybe not as a major characteristic, but if it helps the software engineer to make a better job, then beauty is I would acknowledge beauty as a part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Per. As we have a little delay to YouTube, I think you will answer there, and I will let you know. Now, Swelling, do you want to ask your question, please?
Oh, I can't hear, but I can read.
Yes, you cannot.
Is it possible? Is it possible to use design research developer solution?
I'm sorry.
And use grounded theory as a background approach to analyze data. How do you evaluate this connection of methodologies? Yes, I would definitely acknowledge using grounded theory. And in that context, I would rather see grounded theory as a method for collecting data and analyzing data. So you can actually, as you can see, we are playing with which one is the primary and which is the secondary. So you can under the methodology of design science, you can actually apply grounded theory to a specific solution, and to collect data with an open mind, to analyze the collected data systematically. So yes, it's fully fine to combine, but it's important when you report such a study that you clarify which is your overall paradigm choice, what's the overall goal, and what do you specifically apply to collect data and to analyze data in this context.
Great, thank you, Per. We have one more question from YouTube too. The professors are on YouTube and they are enjoying a lot your talk too. So Professor Mona Lisa Barcelos asked, in software engineering, there is a strong connection between DSR and empirical studies. Usually, empirical studies are used to validate a proposed solution. But as you said, empirical studies can also be used to support other activities in a DSR project. Could you provide some examples to encourage the use of empirical studies throughout a DSR project?
Yes. So the problem understanding, I think, is what first come to my mind, because when we start on a research project, we of course we have some ideas, we have some experience and background, And also my experience with working with students is they tend to rush to a solution too early. So by digging into more depth in understanding the problem, applying various kinds of empirical methods, that could help us to understand, go below the surface of what we think is the problem, and understanding maybe already at that stage that maybe there are some other elements that also play a role in this context. And by understanding the problem better, we have a better chance to find a corresponding solution. So that's what I would recommend. But also, I mean, when we talk about looking into existing solutions, performing literature reviews, or at least mapping studies to get a broad view of what's out there, what have people tried. There is such a flood of publications, so you don't have to repeat what others have done. You can build on their successes and failures, and that's also an approach to synthesize existing research.
For sure, we can have lots and lots of studies to understand better the problem. You always have this kind of issue to rush into the solution, and we forget to really understand the problem and to validate, to understand. So I have a question, if you don't mind. My question is about the centrality of the technological rule and the difference between the technological rule and the Hefner view. I'm implying that for Weringa, the technological rule is there because he puts everything on the engineering cycle, so it's much upfront to the technological rule. But what is your view about the technological rule and the Hefner approach?
I wouldn't say there is a conflict. It's a matter of different emphasis. And as far as I understand, Hefner coming from information systems, which is rooted in social science, they have more the tradition of actually working with theories. So when Hefner is talking about this knowledge side of his cycle, the theories are included. The technological rule comes from Van Eycken and is a specific way of in a very condensed way compressing the knowledge. So I would say it's a matter of focus where if you define or specify a technological rule, you really sharpen or try to be very specific. What is your recommendation? Then you have to be afterwards have your disclaimers that this is not generally valid and etc. But you sharpen your communication, saying this is the goal, this is our proposed solution. And in the Hefner approach, it's more that yes, this is communicated as a new theory or maybe more support for an existing theory, etc. So that's my personal view of that distinction. But you should talk to Emily, my colleague Engström. She's very, very good at specifying the differences between these different scholars about what they say in design science.
Okay, thank you so much. Sometimes I think that the problem is that we have too many methodological approaches to design science research. I'm a fan of the technological rule and your proposal. So I was hoping maybe we can try in a doctoral symposium to have all the doctoral symposiums work sent as in this approach. Maybe we can start to discuss more. It's an idea, maybe for exam next year. Okay. I'm not a co-chair anymore, so I can.
You can hand it over to the next co-chair.
Yes, of course, yes. Okay, guys.
Okay.
So anyone with questions about your research? This is your chance. If you don't have questions, we will have more questions. Don't worry about that. Go on, Swellen. You are looking forward to ask a question, please. Okay, now we have a question here from Rebecca. Rebecca, do you want me to read it? You can.
The question is, yes, the question is in the end is just an explanation, because part of the strategies presented was to gather information, gather evidence from studies, but how we give that back to the practice, how we can fill this gap between academia and industry. I always has this doubt on how to report the findings of the studies in a way that the practice can use some practical results from that. So the question is how to bridge this gap while using this kind of evidence and experimental strategies.
It's a very good question. And actually, we have a PhD student who actually spends his full study on that challenge, and clearly we have to use different communication means. We cannot just put our full paper in the hands of the practitioners. They are not used to read that kind of and they don't spend time on it. So what our PhD students Sergio has worked on is to have this kind of shorter summary, rapid reviews of existing evidence, and actually the technological rules can play a role in that communication as well. But I'm very much a proponent of having the same studies, the same research presented in different ways. So it should be a full journal paper with all the details about methodology and a lot of related work, etc. But you could also have a shorter form where you in a condensed way direct towards the practitioners. How should you do this, and what's your recommendations? So I'm trying to do that sometimes with my PhD students, that they actually dual publication. Then there are different magazines and journals. They say, oh, that's actually you are copying yourself. But I disagree if it is written in a different way with a different audience. It should be clear that and it's actually very different to write a piece for a practitioner than for a researcher. So yes, it's very relevant, and I think we should keep writing our own papers because we need the details, we need the rigor in the academic papers, but we should also try and be willing to go more into the magazine style and also give oral presentations to practitioners that focus on more what's our findings. And there we, of course, sometimes I think or I was asked, what if you were a consultant? What would you say? And on what basis would you say that? And I would say software engineering research they have much more basis for what they are or we are giving advice to industry than these very expensive consultants coming in and advising managers.
Thank you very much.
Great question and great answer. Any other question? It's your last chance. We have just 5 more minutes. So
I do have a question.
Sure.
Sorry, Ty. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm having an issue with my camera, so I'll use the audio only. And this discussion about academia and industry is really relevant. And there is this other side of how do we open up the doors to enter academia, to enter industry and to be able to actually make relevant research for them. So do you have any advice on this other side, Professor Runeson, please?
Oh, if I had one single solution, I would be rich, because this is very much the only advice I can give, which I give my own PhD students. It's to build networks. It's very much on building trust at all levels. So seniors have to build the long-term relation with companies, and the students have to have the chance to actually meet, to perform maybe a small study, but it is not. I have no single solution to it. There must be, of course, a good legal framework around it, because the companies are afraid that students or academics come and steal their ideas. So there must be a clear confidence or a legal framework, so they can trust each other. But also to help. I think what maybe the most successful collaboration programs I have had is when we set several companies together, and as academics catalyze the discussion and exchange between them, and especially if they are in different domains, so they are not direct competitors, they have different markets, but they have joint software engineering challenges, and that's maybe some kind of a general advice to try to set people together in workshops where you can feed in a summary of what's going on in a certain research field, and then you can also ask them in a focus group study on what their challenges are, and if they sit together from different industry domains, you can get a good and broader view of what they are working on. But there is no single and easy way to get to this, and therefore actually then back to us as a community, I think it should be much more rewarded in publications with the proper industry contacts, and should be rewarded, because it is hard and it takes time, in contrast to if you only download some projects from GitHub and run some analysis scripts. That's you have under control in your desktop, in contrast to when you have to face organizations and meet people and so on.
Thank you so much, Bern. Patricia is also thanking you. She has already summarizing your answer. You can disagree or agree. I usually agree with Patti. But okay, now we are in the final minute before our break. We have to thank Per for this wonderful talk and for all these answers that were great too. Thank you so much. Thank you. And everyone, if you could, please turn on your cameras. Let's make a print. If you don't want to have the print, no problem. I will take some prints here, and you can also take some prints there, please. So first group. Okay, now second group. For me, I have 3 groups. Italo, Dania, you are great. You are in my second group. And now the third group. We have debunked the third group. Why is that? Patricia, you are great. Okay, so And one more for the first group with Per. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. This was wonderful, a wonderful way to start our school, our Latin American school. And I was so excited about this talk, and it was all that I was hoping for. Thank you so much. And now we have a little break, right, Alfredo? Now you are the leader.
So thank you again, Per and Tayana. It was a really great talk, and I really appreciate. And I'll have a small short surprise for the participants. We made a video from you. Do you remember you sent the videos? We have a video for you. I'll try to show you this video. It's only 3 minutes, so let me see if I can find it over here, and I'll share the sound. Let me see. Are you seeing my screen? Anyone, please answer. Tayana?
Yes.
Okay, so the video, let me know if you are listening.
Sou Matheus Andrade, aluno de mestrado do programa de pós-graduação em Ciência da Computação da Universidade Federal da Bahia. A minha área de pesquisa está relacionada à sustentabilidade de software.
Hello guys, I'm Crescencio Lima, professor at the Federal Institute of Bahia. Right now I'm researching in software product line testing and architecture recovery.
Eu me chamo Carlitos Fioravante, sou bacharel em análise de sistemas pela Universidade Federal do Mato Grosso do Sul e dentro do mestrado eu tenho agora me aprofundado em temas ligados a todo esse ecossistema do desenvolvimento de software, né? Como, por exemplo, o DevRel, que é o Developer Relations.
Meu nome é César Augusto Greco. Sou formado em Ciência da Computação pela Universidade de Caxias do Sul e atualmente sou aluno de mestrado com o tema Predição de Conflitos de Merge Software.
Sou Daniel Davi, aluno de Salvador, Bahia, Brasil. Sou estudante de mestrado do curso de Ciência da Computação da UFBA. Tenho interesse em desenvolvimento de software focado em testes automatizados.
Eu sou a Cristiane Ilana, sou professora, pesquisadora e terapeuta. Especificamente, o projeto ele propõe o desenvolvimento de um modelo de qualidade.
Eu sou Felipe de Souza Sopinski, eu estou cursando a graduação em Engenharia de Software. Também tive interesse em pesquisar sobre a engenharia de software aplicada na indústria.
Meu nome é Anelisa, eu sou mestranda em Ciência da Computação na Facom UFMS. E o meu trabalho tem por título um modelo baseado em habilidades para a formação de profissionais de Developer Relations, DevRel.
My name is Lavinia. I'm a current master student at Universidade Federal de Pernambuco in Recife, Brazil. I'm research about gender diversity in hackathons, where this is a specific area in the human aspects of software engineering.
Meu nome é Adriano Mendonça Rocha, sou aluno do curso de doutorado na Universidade Federal de Uberlândia. No curso de doutorado estamos realizando 2 grandes estudos. Entender como a qualidade do ranqueamento influencia no desempenho de desenvolvedores durante a execução de alguma tarefa de programação.
Meu nome é Rebeca Mota e esse é meu vídeo de apresentação como critério para inscrição na Escola LATAM de Engenharia de Software. Eu investiguei a parte de desenvolvimento de sistemas de internet das coisas, então focando na parte do software embutido nesse tipo de sistemas e dispositivos.
Hello, all. I hope you like it. Tayana, you are muted. Did you like it? It was nice. We have 2 more videos. Okay?
Maybe it was great. So you have more videos. Okay. Now we can talk in Portuguese, right?
Yeah.
Pessoal, então aproveitaram muito essa primeira palestra, então se preparem para a segunda palestra, certo? Venham com vontade, pessoas, liguem suas câmeras, façam perguntas com as câmeras, vocês começam a ter network com o pessoal, né? É claro que às vezes a gente não consegue ficar o tempo todo de câmera ligada, tudo bem, Mas, assim, quando puder, ligue, né? É muito melhor a gente ver as pessoas do que só ver lá os pontinhos na tela, certo? E, assim, aproveitem, venham preparados, façam mesmo as perguntas que quiserem fazer. O povo todo é muito bom. Então, a gente teve aí uma ótima primeira palestra, não sei você, eu tirei vários prints, certo? E, assim, se preparar, ler esses artigos agora, as perguntas foram maravilhosas, e a gente vai ter um short break, não é isso, Alfredo?
Isso, e a gente volta
Fazendo as
15 para as 11.
Vá lá.
E é isso aí, ó, pessoal. Aproveitem. Essa escola não é para mim, não é para a Tayana, é para vocês. Só que a gente está curtindo
Mas
muito.
a gente
Então,
está de olho. Assim, se vocês não quiserem, a gente está aqui. A gente quer, entendeu?
então é isso aí, querido.
E essa vai ser a última chance de vocês, pessoal. Vai ser o último CBSoft online. O próximo CBSoft vai ter escola para quem for selecionado, não vai ser todo mundo. Já pensaram nisso? Então, essa é a sua chance. Tente firmemente, tente muito.
Isso aí, participem. Obrigado mais uma vez, Tayana, super legal. E a gente se vê daqui a pouquinho, às 15 para as 11, um pouquinho antes, vamos entrar e vamos ver isso aí. Obrigado para todo mundo e obrigado especial para a Tayana e para o Per, que foi ótimo.